welcome to Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, with your host, Buddy Sotello Esquire and Evan Ginzburg. Evan Ginzburg, will you please introduce our guest?
Absolutely. He's my friend Michael Monte from the Notorious Monte and the Pharaoh. How are you, Mike?
Thanks, guys, for inviting me. Pleasure meeting you, Russell and Buddy. And Evan, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I miss you, man. I miss your face. Haven't seen you in a long time, bro.
Yeah, we were at the same station for several years, and we both moved on to bigger and better things. And tell us how Monte and Pharaoh's doing right about now.
We're really doing well. We're picking up a lot of traction. We're on 3 cable channels right now, obviously on social media, YouTube, and we've been picked up from the RTF Sports Network, where we become their anchor show on Fridays from 6 to 7 p.m. and replays on Monday from 10 to 11. So, Jimmy and myself, take this opportunity to thank Evan, who is the guy that actually got the ball rolling with us. As Evan said, we were in a very small studio together, and Evan kind of got us advanced in the wrestling world. So we owe a lot of credit to Mr. Evan Ginzburg for sure.
So tell me how you got started in professional wrestling.
I grew up on it. I met Jimmy Pharaoh in junior high. Quick story, we were at the school bus. He was talking to a friend about professional wrestling, and I slapped him in the back of the head, and I'm like, who watches professional wrestling? That stuff is terrible. And I became friends with him, and then quickly he got me into professional wrestling, where I discovered the Magnificent Morocco and Sergeant Slaughter in the Cobra Clutch Challenge. And we both gained a hatred for Mr. Bob Backlund, which we now truly love and think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But that's how it all started. And I continued watching wrestling into the Hulk Hogan years and till now.
And Mike, you interviewed some of the biggest names in the business and the history of the business. Who are some of your favorite interviews?
For myself, as a pure wrestling fan, would have been Barry Windham. Remember dating that first girl, or, doing something for the first time. I had butterflies having Barry Windham in studio. That was a total honor. We've had so many stars. It's been an honor, the first one that was brought in was Evan. You brought in Greg Valentine. That was Jimmy's favorite wrestler. We grew up on Greg Valentine, and all these guys. They made a difference in people's lives. In fact, we just interviewed Virgil today. Everybody remembers Virgil. And I don't think that guy gets enough credit for being as influential as he was in the industry. We were talking about how he was the Elizabeth for the $1 Million Man. He made the $1 Million Man complete. So it's always an honor to have all these wrestlers on. It gives us the opportunity to interview them and put our spin on it. What they've changed people's lives. They've changed myself and my partner's life for sure.
So what would you say was like a really early influence to get you to do this podcast? And what made you?
It's a TV show.
Oh, the TV show.
It's now a TV show. Thank you, Evan. I was asked by some guy that was doing a podcast to come on, and as a guest. I don't even know how he got my name. I went on as a bucket list thing, and I did fairly well, and he asked me to come on again. And then Jimmy, who I had not seen, my partner, in maybe 10 years, caught me on the internet, found my number, called me, and then we started bringing Jimmy on the show. And then me and Jimmy always had this friendship, and we started kind of taking over this gentleman's show, which probably wasn't fair enough. And we decided to go out on our own, and we went to another station where we met Evan. So it was something out of fun that ended up gaining legs. And I would say solely due to my partner. I mean, he's entertaining, to say the least, and he keeps the ball rolling. But yeah, that's how it basically started going.
And so, what do you feel doing now? Have you ever wanted to be part of an actual wrestling federation, or have you actually been part of a wrestling federation?
No, I haven't. Again, maybe when I was younger. I'm a fairly big guy, so and I was into bodybuilding for a long time. There was a point in my mind that I always thought about wrestling, but I really was a football guy and a baseball guy, and I was an amateur wrestler. I was pretty good at athletics. When I look back now, I wish maybe I would have given it a shot, considering some of the stuff I'm seeing going on now. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I could have been a ECW job enhancement guy or something at that level. And yeah, if I could turn back time, I definitely would have done it. It certainly takes major talent. These guys have it all. The ones that do well, they know how to speak well, they know how to run their gimmick, and most of the time they know how to wrestle, and they know how to enter, or they know how to entertain. So, yeah, if I could turn back time, I would have done it. I'm always envious of Evan. Evan has turned his life into somewhat of a dream, right? He got to be associate producer of probably one of the greatest movies, in my opinion, that was ever made. And this isn't an Evan Love Fest, Evan. I'm just calling it like I see it, right? He created 350 Days, which I find to be one of the finest wrestling documentaries ever made. I've got a list of favorites, that being one of them. So, yeah, I wish I would have maybe turned down a different road and tried something different, for sure.
What would you have been? What would your gimmick have been?
I'm not so sure, man. Athletically, I don't know if I would have been a good enough wrestler, but I definitely would have been a heel. I would not have been a face, for sure. You can't make a face out of this, so I definitely would have been a heel. But as gimmick wise, who knows? I don't know. I mean, when I was younger, maybe I thought I was a pretty boy, so I kind of thought I was like a Shawn Michaels type of guy, but nah, not really. I don't know, man. You know what? I never went that. That's a pretty tricky question. I really never went that deep.
And what would your finisher have been?
My finisher? I don't know. I probably would have went with the pile driver, man. I always loved Morocco's the tombstone pile driver. It was a tombstone pile driver, right? That's really what it was. So they just called it a different name. I was big on Morocco, man. I mean, that guy had so much talent. It was one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. It's funny when they made him a face, it just didn't carry over very well. But at the time, he had me glued to the TV. In fact, I would think before I really started getting into really heavy weightlifting, wrestlers influenced my life because they were so boisterous and loud and look at me, and they were so big and strong and something that you wanted to achieve, right? I wanted to be as big as a wrestler. I wanted to feel that way, and that's what disappoints me about wrestling today, right? It's like there's too many regular people out there. And I'm sorry, I understand that people can wrestle, but there's more in my opinion, to the wrestling game than just wrestling. So, I say it all the time. I don't want to watch a guy who I feel like I could walk into a ring and just beat up legitimately, right? I want to be scared of the wrestler that, I could tell you some wrestling events when I was in the Army, I had wrestlers chasing me around the arena. I was literally scared of them, right? I ran into Haku at a bar when I was in the Army and offered him to buy him a drink, and he looked at me like he wanted to bite my face off, and it scared me enough. But you were scared of Haku, man. You were scared of these guys. Some of these guys now, I'm just, I don't know. They're kind of ruining the sport, in my opinion, but that's okay. Just my opinion.
That's an interesting take on that. Have you been watching wrestling recently with the empty arenas, and what are your thoughts about that?
I watch pretty regularly for the show, right? Am I totally entertained by it? No, I think it's pretty bad. But I have to be fair, right? They're trying to entertain to the level that they can entertain at, right? We don't know how baseball is going to be without fans. We're going to see how football is without fans. So it could be equally as bad. Do I think the product is good? Absolutely not. And a lot of times when they do an angle that's actually pretty good and there's no fans there, I go, why are you wasting this right now? Don't waste it. Save it. Hopefully COVID will be done with, and then you could use this. But it's pretty bad right now.
Mike, like yourself, I've done God knows how many interviews over the years. Have you ever had the experience where there was a hero of yours, whether face or heel, doesn't matter, and you were disappointed with the interview, or vice versa, somebody you were never really a fan of, and the interview was tremendous? I've had both experiences.
I would say this is most of the interviews every wrestler's had their positives and negatives. The one disappointment I had now, he gave a great interview, but you know how you feel like maybe just someone's not a good person? I felt Scott Hall wasn't a good person. When I was talking to him privately, he just didn't seem like he was a good person. He seemed very arrogant. And, again, one of the things I think one of my strengths is I judge people pretty quickly, and I can tell if they're good or bad. I didn't get a good feeling from Scott Hall. Everybody else, I got to be honest with you, whether they were blowing smoke or whatever, they've all been gentlemen. I can't really complain about anyone. Have I been amazed by someone? Probably the most amazing interview we had to be Gangrel. Gangrel, I didn't know what we were going to do with, and this guy gave us an interview like, we laugh, he just gangreled this interview. It was unbelievable.
I've worked a couple shows with Gangrel back in California Championship Wrestling, and he is, like you say, class act, super nice guy, really fun to hang out with. Everything that you probably felt from him during your interview is really who he is as a person, also backstage and behind the scenes too. So wonderful.
I will tell you the most amazing thing that's happened to us with the show. So we were doing the show, and we were just doing the show, and they started picking up momentum. But you don't know if people really like it or they don't like it or whatever the case is. And we're not looking to be stars. We're both in our 50s, but we're looking to make a difference, right? I think I'm going to quote Evan from when I first met Evan, and we started doing this. He's like, "You're making history. When you're long gone, this is, people will see you forever." And one time I realized this could be for real is, you all know Hillbilly Jim, right?
Oh yeah.
Hillbilly Jim was on a show with us. And, came off the show. He said, "Great interview, best thing we've ever done. Thank you so much." But you take it with a grain of salt. You don't know, right? Who knows what their motives are to say certain things. Hillbilly Jim went out of his way to find my phone number and called me like 3 weeks later to tell him it was the best show he's ever been on in his career. And I was like, I work a lot and I was tired. I was like, "Okay, yeah, whatever. Thanks, whatever." Hang up the phone. Later do I find out that Hillbilly Jim is a multi-millionaire who doesn't need to do this.
Who does radio? He knows good radio.
Exactly. And then I said, "Oh my God, this is real." And we've had guys like Sandman said, "Wow, you guys made my day today," and other ones. And that I find humbling.
I have a mini Hillbilly Jim story, which is that back in 1992, Hillbilly Jim visited my friend's video store, and he was the Coliseum video representative. So he just went around the country, just putting up big pictures of himself and WWF merchandise there. And he put me on the phone he said, "Look, Hillbilly Jim's in my store. You got to talk to him." So he put him on the phone, and I started gushing about, "Oh, I remember when you were Harley Davidson and you all your stuff from the Mid-South." And he said, "Well, gosh, Russ, you know more about my career than I do." So he was a really jovial soul. Very, very
I'll
fun.
tell you guys an opposite story. I go into a record store in Queens to look at the records. The owner knows me because I'm a big music guy. And he goes, "Bubba Ray Dudley's over there. Don't talk to him. He doesn't like to be bothered." And I'm like, look, I could care less about Bubba Ray Dudley. It's like, if the guy wants to be left alone, it's no problem. I don't need like a warning. So some guys are outgoing, and other guys it's just like
Well, let me ask you guys this: you guys have been in the industry a very long time, and you've known. Do you become numb to these guys at this point? I can remember the day we met Greg Valentine and we had butterflies in our stomach. And now it's like, this is business as usual. They're just regular guys. Are you guys numb to it like that at this point?
No. For me, if it's a childhood hero, like you said, Morocco, I thought Morocco was one of the greatest heels of all time. Top 10. I mean, as great as anybody. I would mark out for Morocco. If it was somebody who's bigger today, I would not mark out because I'm not as big a fan. You follow my logic? If it's somebody that means something to me, I would mark out. Let's say, for example, Clint Eastwood, or some star that I grew up on, Gene Hackman. I would mark out. Definitely.
But here lies the problem, right? We're all older, so we remember these guys when we're younger because they've influenced our lives. I think we forget, as wrestling analyst or talk show host or whatever you want to call us, or even just a wrestling fan. These young kids, Braun Strowman's their hero. And as bad as we may think certain things are, these kids think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread because these are their heroes. And I always try to keep myself directed there. Do I like today's wrestling? No, not necessarily. But I understand the fact that I'm also 50-something years old, and I can't remember a Braun Strowman like I do a Don Morocco. However, I will tell you that I am a lover of women. So I will always love women's wrestling. They will entertain me forever because they are women, right? And they're attractive to me. And now they've become great wrestlers on top of it. And I enjoy the women's product. I don't necessarily enjoy the men's product.
Who you consider a great wrestler today?
A great wrestler, woman, man, anything?
Woman wrestler.
Charlotte Flair is the greatest woman wrestler ever to step into a ring, in my opinion. And I've watched...
I've got a differing opinion with you.
Go ahead.
Sarah Del Rey. Sarah Del Rey is the toughest woman to ever step into a ring. And I know because I trained with her. I got started with her in 2000 at APW. And she used to unload on me all the time as she was training to be a valet. She used to beat the hell out of me because she was still learning how to pull her punches and how to do low blows without hitting people right in the junk. Well, that's how she learned, was by hitting me in the junk on a repeated basis. So I'm saying Sarah Del Rey, and she's the one that's involved in developing women's talent in the WWE right now. So I'm going on record with Sarah Del Rey as my favorite.
I always like Gail Kim.
Gail Kim's a great choice. I love Gail Kim too. I think she was incredible. But I thought, again, on the other hand, I'm not a big fan of Becky Lynch, right? I never thought she had anything. I don't think she has great mic skills. I never understood where that push even came from.
I also worked a lot with Bailey when she was developing here in Northern California. And when she worked some shows at Wrestling for Charity. And she is a genuinely really, really nice girl. She's very, very nice. I mean, she's worked very hard to be where she's at. And then I don't know if you remember Susumi Sakai over in Japan. And she's also a friend of mine. And she's probably the toughest person I know as far as male or female, as far as being able to take just a raw amount of punishment and still keep going. I don't know anyone else that's had as long a career as she's had, taking as much punishment as she's had. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but let me ask you this. As great of wrestlers as they are, does that translate to dollars? That translate to fans sitting in the seats to go watch these wrestlers? I understand the pureness that you guys speak about. Look, I watch your show every week, right? And I always respect, but there's a fine line between being really good at what you do and actually bringing dollars to a company. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, McDonald's makes billions of bucks and their burgers, quote unquote, suck, but so many people eat them, so there is a certain level of quality doesn't always matter. Is if you can give people what they want, it isn't always quality that they're looking for.
Well, so there lies the artist or the businessman, right? So to me, it's okay, would you rather be a small burger company where there's a few people that really enjoy it because it's just that great of a burger? Or would you rather be McDonald's who yeah, probably not the best quality burger, but enough people love it that they'll eat it.
That's where the WWE is right now. They definitely have such a name associated product that people turn it on and they watch it, even though there isn't really the quality of matches there that say maybe you'll see in AEW. At least I feel that the quality of matches, the action in the ring, I'm enjoying in AEW a lot more than I'm enjoying with the WWE. And maybe you have a differing opinion to that.
I'll agree with you. I think AEW actually is a little more entertaining. But then again, I wasn't this pure wrestling fan. I got to be honest with you. I love old school wrestling, right? That's what I grew up on, and I'm going to call Hulk Hogan's era, old school wrestling. Okay. Even though I know it goes a lot further than that. But my point is this: when I watch those old school matches, I have a hard time because they're not great matches, right? There's a lot of stomping and arm bars and kicking, but it was everything that led up to those matches that made you want, like, go crazy when I was watching Madison Square Garden Network in my living room, running around like a maniac, watching what I can. I mean, I actually looked at a video back to Bob Backlund. And it's funny, when Bob Backlund loses that title to the Iron Sheik, and they do this interview with Lord Alfred Hayes with Arnold Skolin behind him, and, he said, hurt back. I dare any wrestling fan to go watch that interview. If that's not one of the greatest interviews that was ever had in any kind of wrestling organization, I give Backlund props. And I forget that. I forget what led all to that because you kind of lose traction with everything that goes on, right? You forget about those eras. But I guess my point to you guys is this. It's great that there's great wrestling matches, but the storylines are awful. So there's nothing that leads you to believe into wanting to carry on. And that's the bigger problem. And that's why I kind of give again, Evan's not a huge fan of Randy Orton. I wasn't a huge fan of Randy Orton, but personally now, I think Randy Orton's giving some of his best work he's ever done right now. Whether it's a storyline or whatever, there's actually a storyline that you can get involved in. And then that goes back to my original statement of saying, guys, why are you wasting such great storylines when there's no fans?
That's an appropriate point that you make. I mean, when you talk about, what the in-ring product that we have now, especially in the death of kayfabe, and you also have this chronic no-sell mentality behind stuff. I mean, when we were watching as younger folks, everything built up to a finisher. Everything built up to a finishing move. Now you basically have one finishing move following another finishing move, following another finishing move, and nobody sells. And then you have a 1-2 shoulder kick up. How many shoulders off the mat do you possibly see in one match now? Whereas in the older times, when a guy went for a pin, usually you'd see maybe 1 or 2 false pins, and then that would be it for a whole match. Now you'll see 1 or 2 false pins happening probably per minute in a number of situations.
So why do you think that's happening?
Short attention span, I think, yeah. and the fact that they're trying to cater to people that can't watch, anything without it being over the top and super spectacular every possible second. And Alice Cooper has a saying that when everything shouts, nothing does.
Yeah,
it's a great point.
Yeah, and it's sort of that's where we've got. I don't know how you dial back the action. And what I've seen from the WWE is how they'll do it is by having promos that are 20 minutes long, and
that's you were answering the question right there. They're not playing to the, to the Russell Jackmans or the Evan Ginzburgs or the Mike Montes anymore. They're playing to the audience that doesn't have time to sit there and watch a 20-minute armbar. Okay. They don't, again, they won't even extend a storyline, but again, they're playing to the masses. This isn't the only sport that does it. I don't know if you're a fan of football, but I mean, defense is nothing anymore, right? It's nonstop offense. You can't play defense. They don't want to see defense. Baseball, the same thing, right? It's like you don't want to see, the manager on the mound anymore. They're counting how much time you're at a mound, right? The attention span is not there, and it will never change. if we're looking for a rainbow that's never coming back.
Mike, has there ever been someone that you've been dying to interview that you haven't at this point?
Yeah. I think, well, I really want to interview Bob Backlund. I mean, that's definitely a milestone. And I guess I would shut down the show if I ever had the opportunity to interview Hulk Hogan. I mean, some of my other heroes are gone at this point. I mean, if I could turn back time, I would have loved to have Roddy Piper. God, I would have loved to have Jimmy Snuka. I mean, we were going to have Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson in studio together, and unfortunately Rocky passed. And, so that's the other thing, they're starting to fall by the wayside now. And it's like, we're losing opportunities to even meet these gentlemen at this point.
And so do you feel like there's enough appreciation by today's modern wrestlers for what these previous wrestlers have achieved, or do you think that they feel like they've been on their own? They don't really need to give the tribute back to a guy like Rocky Johnson, or that they don't owe much to a superstar Billy Graham for setting the stage because they have it hard enough on their own right now?
I think it's just like anything else in sports in general. They don't know the history of the sport, and that's my opinion. I don't really know. I'm not talking to these people, but from what I think is that they don't know the history of the sport, just like football players don't know the history of the sport, right? They're just playing the sport for what they're in it. They're in it now, right? So, I mean, that's my opinion. I'm not so sure the wrestling fan even knows who superstar Billy Graham is anymore. I mean, I think if you ask a 14-year-old who's superstar Billy Graham, they're not going to be able to tell you. They're not going to be able to tell you who Bob Backlund is.
I'll tell you something funny, Mike. With 350 days, I was associate producer, not the creator, by the way, but with 350 days, people look at the ad and they go, "That's Hulk Hogan." And I go, "No, that's superstar Billy Graham." They don't know. You're right. Some people just don't know.
A lot of 14-year-olds might not even know who Hulk Hogan is.
That's right. I think it stops at Stone Cold and The Rock at this point. That's where wrestling begins with most of the fans now. I don't know what the demographic. Well, I think John Cena gets a bad rap. I always consider John Cena the last great professional wrestler. That is it. After him, that's where it all stopped. He was the last one that we can identify with as being this last.
So Luchasaurus.
I do love Luchasaurus, man. Oh my God, I do love Luchasaurus. I'm glad you brought him up. I do love him. And
I'm with you on that. Well,
and Jungle Boy.
There have been some great kids that are coming up. I mean, as I said, like some of the people like Bailey and we've seen some other talent work their way in, and I like to see how at least AEW is working in some of the New Japan talent more effectively than the WWE is. I mean, the WWE brings in the New Japan talent and just squashes them or just mishandles them so badly, especially like Asuka, if you wanted to, point that, in a way, or, when they had Gallows and Anderson, they just really, the opportunity to recreate the Bullet Club just completely, fell apart once they brought in the guys all into the WWE.
Well, I think that's by design, right? You don't want to recreate something. He wants, or Vince's creative team wants to create their own, right? It's all about marketing. And then again, I don't want to differ with you too much on this, but I feel like, you got to make it on your own a little bit too. I mean, Gallows and Anderson, I don't know. They didn't really do much for me. Whether it was a WWE writing or not, I don't know. But even when they put them with Styles, I don't know. They just didn't really do anything for me. Again, I don't know. Only time will tell, right? When they show up, we're whistling with now. They're going to TNA. What they call TNA now, or whatever.
Impact.
Yeah. So only time will tell if they can make a difference in Impact. I don't know. I don't know. Good.
I went to Madison Square Garden. I'm sitting there. Gallows and Henderson come out. They sing a song with Elias, and that's it for the night. He didn't even wrestle. They were singing. I wanted to put a gun to my head, okay? Because these guys were so great in New Japan. I mean, you know, sometimes WWE doesn't want the talent.
I think everybody, any organization squanders talent. You can look at WCW. They had all the talent in the world. They squandered it, and maybe it's too many, too much, too many people. I mean, look, Evan, we've gone back and forth here. You know, guys, I'm purely a WWE guy, right? I grew up in the Northeast. I love the WWE. It's like almost like baseball, right? I'm a Yankee fan. I don't like the Red Sox. You know, did I watch WCW? Sure, I watched Georgia Championship Wrestling all the time. But when they used to come up Northeast, like I'll tell you, when Evan used to tell me that he used to go see Ric Flair against Steamboat at Meadowlands, I used to be like, "You're a traitor, man. You're a traitor. You cannot go to an NWA card, man. You're the guy."
Well, have sympathy for me because out here we were in AWA territory. So
There you
we
go.
mostly got a lot of, General Adnan LKC versus Crusher Jerry Blackwell as far as like main event matches go, or when the WWF would come around. The NWA rarely had any appearances here in Northern California. It was AWA territory.
So that's my point. So you grew up on it. You grew up on AWA. So were you itching for the WWF or the NWA to come to your town, or
Yes.
did you feel like you had a loyalty to the AWA?
Oh, I wanted the NWA to show up here so badly. I would have done anything. I still wish the NWA would do West Coast shows. I think that they've always really ceded that area over first to the AWA and now to the WWE and the WWF, WWE. They pretty much surrendered that entire territory. We never got to see Ric Flair except when he was with the once he moved over to the WWE. We never got to see Dusty Rhodes until he was, the American Dream. So like a lot of these guys in their prime, we missed out on unless they were in the AWA. Well, like when the Road Warriors would come to town with the AWA, that place was packed because we knew that was the one time we were going to get to see like a really top-notch wrestling act. The wrestling team that was there that everybody was talking about. Otherwise, we were having to watch Greg Gagne, go 60-minute Iron Man match with Jim Brunzell, against like the Medics or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, the AWA matches really let something to be desired, So
Yeah, but you did have all the top talent went through there, right? You had Adonis and Ventura, right? They were there for a while. You had the Freebirds. I mean, again, as a WWF guy or WWE guy, I was so into the Freebirds against the Road Warriors in the AWA, but it fell so flat for me. Every time I caught it, I was like, man, they're just making a mess of this. Like that, to me, could have been one of the greatest feuds of all time.
Well, it did continue into WCW when the Legion of Doom faced Ronnie Garvin and not Ronnie Garvin, Jimmy Garvin and Michael Hayes as the team.
Yeah.
Are you still there? We're having a little bit of video difficulty.
I'm here. Okay. Can you see me? Okay.
Yeah, I just you froze for a second, but but you're right. It wasn't the same with Bam Bam Terry Gordy in there as part of the whole scene. That was the Freebirds when they were really, one of the best tag teams of all time. They certainly. I wonder how they're going to deal with all the Southern Stars and Bars flags when the WWE wants to release anything related to the Freebirds and all the other guys from the old Deep South and their displays.
I don't think they'll release anything because you know what? It's not going to sell, right? No, like we said, they're not selling to anybody anymore. It's young kids don't know who these guys are, right? So it's like, why even have that kind of pressure on yourself? Just don't put it on your network. Don't sell anything with it, It's
unfortunate because I do think that there is a certain love of wrestling history that people, once they do get involved and they do start watching wrestling, they're like, well, how did this all kind of come from? And especially because everything new was old once. And so, when you talk about superstar Billy Graham and seeing, hey, he's doing everything that Hulk Hogan was doing, 4 years ago, 4 years before he did it, and when people see that, you see a lot of other wrestlers borrowing from like Dusty Rhodes and everything that he does and the way he addresses crowds and stuff like that, that is where we'll get a better product from learning off of what made these other wrestlers great, as opposed to just trying to launch out on your own and what we
But
did with the Miz.
they've got to have that natural talent. We say it on the show all the time. They have to have it. You know what it is? My wife, who can't stand professional wrestling, right? Because, we've been together 20-something years, and she's sick of me even talking about it or looking at it, right? We're watching, I don't know, a documentary on something. I forget which documentary. It wasn't 350 Days, but it was another documentary. And Superstar Billy Graham, they just showed a flash of Superstar Billy Graham flexing his 24-inch arms. And she says to me, "Who's that?" That's it. When someone that doesn't watch wrestling sees that and goes, "Who's that?" That's it. There's no one that has it anymore. There's no one that makes you want to watch. When the glass used to break and Stone Cold used to come out, you'd get, at 30-something years old, the hair on my arms used to stand up. When Hogan came out, or, I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I know, Evan and I have just discussed this too, but when Andre faces off against Hogan, no matter, I've seen them fight a million times, right? Back in the day at the Long Island Arena. But that matchup and them staring at each other, my heart was going crazy, man. It's not happening anymore. We're never going to get to that point anymore. They're not making those type of stars, or there's not enough talent out there that someone has that type of stars. As great as AJ Styles is, if AJ Styles was a wrestler back in the 80s, I don't think he's anything special.
It's very hard to have that perfect combination of charisma, talent, gimmick, great promos. Morocco is one of the few, Ric Flair. It's few and far between where you put all those pieces together. And you're right. Today, there's great wrestlers with charisma in Japan, like an Okada, but I don't see too many on American TV where I go, wow, I must pay to see that match.
And where do you think that leads the future of wrestling? Because maybe it's eating itself in a lot of ways and becoming so just for the super fan that it's lost that sort of mass appeal that it had once in the 80s and early 90s.
I think it leaves it in really bad shape. Honestly, like our show's based around, actually, it's about new wrestling, but a lot of it has to do with old wrestling. It has to do with reminiscing about old wrestling and interviewing older stars. We've had some newer stars on, but I think wrestling is looking at a really troublesome future.
Huh.
You think it's bad now. I envision wrestling to be almost like a video game. Where, a guy gets charged up by a battery, after 10 minutes. I mean, look, I understand they're doing what they have to do, but how do you come back from a pay-per-view where you threw people off the top of a building? I know we're suspending disbelief, but you don't come back for that type of stuff. Or a guy gets buried in a graveyard. There's this campy, sticky stuff out there, but there comes a point where you can't go that far.
Interesting. Oh, that's an interesting point we haven't had a lot of people bring up. And yet, what's the alternative? I mean, I felt for a while the NWA was putting together an interesting kind of counter product by having something that was so studio based and really bringing it back to the way things looked like back in the Crockett promotion times. And I really liked that. That was something that I actually enjoyed quite a bit. And the corniness of the question mark and the fact that the interviews were really, no more than 5 minutes long, and that they had, only an hour show. I think that was one thing that I always talk about on this show, is that when we were younger, finding wrestling was kind of a chore, and at best you got 2 to 3 hours of it a week. And now that you have just 2 or 3 hours a night sometimes every night of the week. You're close to it now. When you add in Impact, when you add in the NXT shows, and you add in New Japan, you get a lot of wrestling per week. So its exclusivity is a real problem. It would be great to. What I liked about the NWA is its 1 hour format. It really made you get to the point. You didn't show replays of what just happened. You don't have the commercial breaks while the wrestling is going on and shrinking the wrestling into a tiny little box while, Geico Lizard is trying to hawk you something.
Yeah.
Everything would fit within, whatever time limit they had. And I think that sort of thing, that's sort of the cheapening of like, well, you know what? Wrestling is important will be as important to you as, Flo and her, insurance stuff is. That sort of like putting them side by side and saying, well, yeah, your attention will be just as equally divided between these two. I think it's a real problem for wrestling. It's really degraded it to a level where people don't feel they have to pay attention to what's going on in the ring, because what's going on in the ring isn't important anymore.
I think those are really great points, but I think we're missing that. Here's the facts. Times have changed, right? We're doing a interview over a computer out of 3 different locations. You don't have to watch wrestling the day it's on, because you could catch it tomorrow on Roku or YouTube or Facebook, right? It's not must-see TV. That's where it's all lost. It's like, you have to watch a football game, right? Because there's an ending and you want to see that ending. Wrestling's predetermined and whatever. And again, there's no, like I said, there's no stars. There's no someone that you have to go watch anyway, right? So this is a problem. COVID's a problem, certainly for everybody on this planet. But for wrestling, there could be a legitimate point where wrestling, in my opinion, dies. If COVID goes into next year, even a $1 billion company like the WWE, in my opinion, who knows? Maybe they just shut it down, maybe not shut it down, but sell it off to Fox Network, because they just can't support it anymore. I mean, they're living on these television contracts. You think Fox, I don't know how long that's going to go for, but do you think anybody's going to renew for this type of stuff? It's drawing no ratings. And when I mean no ratings, a million people is not a lot of people nowadays. So it's a big problem. We may be talking about the history of wrestling a year from now or two.
Wow. Mike, let me ask you a question about the show. You guys basically come on like a tag team. You have hats and sunglasses. For the people that haven't seen it, tell the audience about that.
So, we decided to, build some sort of format where we're a little, gimmicky, right? So like a gimmick, Jimmy Farrow, he's the Pharaoh, and he wears a baseball hat backwards with a cigarette in his mouth and his sunglasses.
Just like the Pharaohs.
That's right, almost. And then, myself is myself under my name, but I wear a hat and glasses. And, we wanted to build these cartoony characters and, something that we could actually market, and see how that went. And, look, the show is based on 2 older guys who grew up as fans that have never been in the business like you 2 gentlemen have been, right? We don't claim to ever be in the business. We never worked for a wrestling organization. We are fans that paid I forget what it cost back then, but, to sit in Madison Square Garden every month or the Nassau Coliseum, and we idolize these guys and we love these guys and we wanted to be these guys. And at 50-something years old, now we're interviewing these guys that we wanted to be, or we talk about wrestling as a fan and what we think. And at no point do we act like it's like we don't hold kayfabe or act like it's real. We don't prejudge. We say if we don't like something, but I certainly I see a lot of broadcasters or podcasters saying, well, if I wrote or they should have did this. Listen, I'm not a writer. I can't, it's very easy to pick on someone's work. I can say whether I liked it or not, that's fine. But, but everybody seems to think they can, in this world now, can do everybody else's job, or they could have done it better. Let me tell you something. If you're a writer and you think you could have did it better, believe me, they would have hired you by now. and they haven't. So whether you think you could have done it better, obviously you can't. Or, a lot of people, if I ran the WWE, no, you're not running the WWE, and you could open up your own independent thing like the NWA, and let's see what you could do with that. Go get your investors and show me what you're worth. That's my whole point. Everybody in this world now can do everything better than everybody else. And the show's based on, this is wrestling. Talk from the heart as a fan. Some people hate it. A lot of people like it. We're building a pretty solid fan base. Sometimes we upset people. We say things, look, we're WWE homers, right, Evan? I mean, I got to say it right now. Me and Evan go back and forth about a lot of different things. And if you want to discuss that now, we can, Evan. That'd be great. We have a belief. But the one thing is, I respect everybody's opinion, no matter what. I'll be honest. I'm a big fan of Vince McMahon. I'm a big fan of his management style. I'm a big fan of the way he's run his business. I'm a big fan of the way he took his father's business and really just mowed all over everybody. And there's a respect level. Do I feel bad for some of the people that this happened to? Yeah, sure I do. But again, just looking at Vince McMahon as the businessman, you asked me who I'd want to interview. Vince McMahon is the guy I'd want to interview, because that's the guy that I probably have the most respect for in this business.
And interestingly, I would enjoy interviewing Vince McMahon because I think it's loathsome that during a pandemic, he made $177 million while laying off dozens of employees, keeping his kids on payroll and family. And for example, Carl Anderson said Triple H looked at him during contract negotiations and said, I look at you and I see your kids, and what if AEW doesn't last? I promise WWE will always be here. 6 months later, mid-pandemic, got rid of them. So, it's not just about making money. These are people sacrificing their bodies. And a lot of wrestlers do not end up well. And partly that's because there's no pensions, 401ks, or health benefits. This is a billionaire. So I love Mike Monte. I mean, but we totally disagree on Vince. Totally.
Well, can I ask you this, though, Evan? If you owned a company or ran a company and it was I don't care, whether it be a supermarket or a wrestling organization, and your children worked for you, and I'm asking you personally, do you think you would take care of your children before you took care of Mike Monte, who worked for you?
I think I would try to take care of everybody, and for the children not to sacrifice one penny when they have multi-million-dollar contracts as both performers and front office, and I'm sure wonderful benefits to boot. I see the injustice of it.
And I would want my kids to feel that they were better than somebody else just because they happen to be born to somebody. You don't live in a kingship. And
I don't think, Russell, I'm saying that they feel better. What I'm saying is, you're the father, you own this company, you love your children, and you know what? So it's just a lot of different things in play here. Number two, the one thing we haven't discussed is this is a publicly traded company. Vince McMahon is the CEO of this company. His responsibility as a CEO is to the investors, not to the wrestlers and not to the talent. His
not
job
to his kids.
This is true.
Yeah.
Good point. That is a great point. That being said,
well, that's the thing, is that I think that there's a certain level of this like untouchableness. Vince does work in a level of like, you are his favorite, and then he'll let you get away with anything, or he doesn't like you and everything you do is crap, and he'll get you out of this organization as fast as possible when he doesn't like you. And
but isn't that everybody in the real world? You have bosses that love you and they turn a blind eye. Listen, there's a rule in business, in my opinion, right? It takes a lot. If someone likes you, it takes a lot of work to make them not like you. If they don't like you in the beginning, it takes a lot of work to make them like you. So the WWE is no different than the regular world. Vince McMahon is a human being just like yourself, me, Evan. Okay? Yes, you got valued points, but again, he does have a responsibility to the investors.
But here's a point that the fans often neglect. Creative, the ironically named creative, their job is to find roles for these wrestlers, to put on great angles, have great matches, have things that we care about. What we were all agreeing on earlier is there's very little that we care about that we're emotionally invested in. So you can't just say this wrestler is on the bad list because, creative doesn't have anything for them. That's creative's job. They were hired because they have the skills. So, the truth is somewhere in the middle. But just to say this guy's on the bad list and he sits there twiddling his thumbs and then is unceremoniously future endeavored, as they say, it's not quite fair to the wrestler. He or she has the skills.
Do you know that the WWE pays companies, I know the particular company that they pay, that sits there and follows the ratings and everything that's going on. And if, Russell, you come out for your little segment and it does very poorly, that's measured. And they have all these reports. And even live during a show, for example, if Evan was to come out and all of a sudden there was a spike, what they do is they bring Evan out again. And what happens is that's how they try to keep this production. They present these to advertisers, yada, yada, yada. But my point here is this. There's so many wrestlers in the WWE. There's not enough room and there's not enough time. And they're not talented enough that they could all go on at the same time. And honestly, in my opinion, they had no choice but to cut some of these people because they're not bringing any money from the live events. They're suffering just like everybody else. So you're right about creative, Evan. It is their responsibility. But again, I think back in the day when they made somebody dress up as Doink the Clown, it was up to Doink the Clown to make something out of that character, right? Whether they did it or not is up to them.
Yes and no. I sat in Madison Square Garden. Steve Austin comes out as the ringmaster. Second or third match. Nobody cared. A year or two later, he's the biggest star in the world. So it's still up to creative. If you're not going to let somebody be themselves, like AJ Styles is AJ Styles, and it works. But if you're going to give somebody a stupid gimmick, it's on you. It's on you. WWE over the years has killed a lot of great wrestlers.
Sure.
Barry Windham. God, what they did to Terry Taylor, I cringed 30 years later. Terry Taylor was up and coming in NWA.
But see, now I'm a huge Terry Taylor fan, but I'll challenge you with this. My belief is the Red Rooster could have been a good gimmick. My belief is he didn't believe in that gimmick, and he went out there and half-assed it. I was a big fan of him, and I really loved the Red Rooster. I got to be honest. I think he just didn't want to do it.
And I saw him 6 months earlier in Philly with the NWA, and the guy was great and climbing the ranks. So
the TV title match I remember him having with Jake the Snake Roberts in Mid-South was off the hook. That was a hell of a match. And Vince didn't know what to do really with Terry Taylor. And I think that the Red Rooster was this, I felt also like Evan, that it was a forced gimmick, that it just wasn't something that was really him. I mean, it's, you want to find things that are really, that's one of the things as a manager I always tried to look to, is to try to find out what is within the wrestler themselves that really motivates them and turn that into a character that they feel comfortable with. Vince much more is like, okay, I'm going to make, Tony Atlas into Sava Simba, because I want a big jungle warrior. I'm going to make crime time, happen, even though, those guys aren't a perfect fit for each other, at the time. They hadn't really worked with each other that well. And then, and again, with Gallows and Anderson, we go back to kind of where we started with having, there's no doubt those two individuals are highly talented, but they really never got to show what they could do in the WWE. Would you agree with that? Yeah. They never had any matches where they showed really, they were up against like the Vikings, for God's sakes. What are you going to do? How are you going to make a match of the Vikings look any good? No matter what.
Sometimes you just have to let them wrestle. Just let them wrestle,
Yeah, I would like to see more of that, but we don't let guys call anything in the rings anymore. There's like 20-page list of all the moves that you can't do in the ring, or all the things you can't say in the ring, and that wrestlers have this on the back of their heads. If they make one mistake, that they're going to be off the card, is gotten out of control. Wrestlers used to be able to think, okay, I can mess up in the ring, but I can bring this match back under control if I do this, I do that. Sure, I missed the drop kick, or I didn't get the signal here, but I can still call a decent enough match in the ring so that it's not going to be a disaster. But now they're under so much friggin' pressure that if it isn't done exactly as choreographed, that Vince is going to say, you're off the card, that these guys are now walking on eggshells, or wrestling on eggshells, literally. And that's, I think, why the product has no spontaneity and no heart in it. That's my take.
I don't. How much influence do you think Vince McMahon has anymore? Anyway, everybody keeps saying, "Oh, Vince this, Vince that." I don't even think he's running the thing anymore. To be honest with you, it's his head booker. It's it was Heyman, and it's Triple H. I don't understand why Vince always gets the bad rap on this. Like, why is it Vince? I don't know how much. I know some people in the WWE, and I don't know what kind of involvement he has with what goes on the shows anymore. I got to be honest with you.
Well, for example, he's tired of Shayna Baszler. They'll just stop a push. That.
Well, did you think Baszler was going anywhere? Were you enthralled with her? We're like, oh man, I got to catch Baszler this week.
Well, if I was the promoter, I would have had her and Ronda Rousey, two MMA champions, and go at it. Same with Lashley and Lesnar.
Yeah.
To me, that made sense. So sometimes I just think they're so busy with the comedy, the shtick, that they don't see the money.
See, I honestly think they're holding on to Lesnar Lashley. Like I was saying, don't waste too much time in this COVID era. It's like, don't put that on. Like, okay, Tessa Blanchard, right? Free agent. If they signed her now, if you put her against Charlotte Flair in a pay-per-view with no one in the audience, this is a waste of everyone's time.
Yeah.
Right? You got to have 80,000 fans going crazy. Do you follow what I'm saying? It's like, don't use all your bullets, and let's hope we get out of this COVID era.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. We're right at the end of the hour here. I want you to be able to promote your show and anything else that you'd like to say is coming up, or if you have any big guests that are going to be on your show.
Thank you. All right, thank you. It's been an honor to be on your show. Thank you again to give me this opportunity. Monte and the Pharaoh could be seen on Facebook, Monte and the Pharaoh page, YouTube, Monte and the Pharaoh page, Twitch, Monte and the Pharaoh page, channel 115 on Tuesdays from 8:30 to 9 p.m. and channel 115 on Saturday mornings from 6 to 6:30 a.m. Channel 20 at 1:30 in the morning on Friday. And on RTF Sports Network, their anchor show every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. And then they have a replay on Monday. We just got done going to go on social media with the Virgil interview. Everybody remembers Virgil. And on Thursday, we have Just Incredible in studio. So we'll be doing an interview with that ECW legend. Monte and the Pharaoh also is looking to sign one more deal with Sirius Radio. So we're working on that right now. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about our show.
Great.
I just want to give a shout out to Jimmy Farrow and Bart Briggs. Let's talk. You know, we could disagree on stuff and still be friends, like me and Mike, right?
Absolutely. I know Jimmy and Barta, they consider you a friend. They're big fans. It's funny in this whole radio wrestling things. Sometimes, we get upset with each other, obviously, and we're passionate, and there's nothing wrong with passion. But we always got to remember, too, right? Life is short, and we're friends, and you never forget who gets you somewhere or does things for you and who's been a true friend. And I could say, Evan, you're a true friend to the show, to me and Jimmy, and we just thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
And send your cohort this way. We'd love to interview him on the show one of these days in the future.
I don't know if you're ready for that, man. That could be a crazy show.
Get
ready not to talk, because that guy is a plethora of information, man.
That's what Evan said about you. So you said,
I'm not nearly the talent that Jimmy Farrow is. Trust me. I'm the guy who just like this, a straight man. Jimmy Farrow is a true talent, just like you and Evan. You guys are true talents. I'm just the guy in the corner.
Well, it looks like your dog is telling us it's time to wrap things up.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks. We'll see everyone next week. Thanks for being on the show. Bye-bye, everybody.